You guys are in for a real treat today. This is Janie here at the League-Kempner House in Galveston, and I was down working on something totally unrelated when I got a call from Eben with McNatt Contracting, and he is the gentleman who's actually doing the work rebuilding the window frames for these round windows in the alcove, and he needed to stop by and look again exactly how these windows seat into the brickwork and take some more measurements. See, I just assumed you would get a wider piece and cut it
It's not
to the
that
curve.
simple.
It's not that simple.
No, because you have an angle and it's a curved angle.
Mm-hmm.
So
It's two different.
you could mill it out of a huge thick
Big piece.
but then you'd have to have some really big jigs to be able to cut it like that. And a
So
really
you cut the
big piece
angle
of wood.
first and then you're bending it?
It's been a cool process watching you do that. It's an impressive skill.
It sounded like the process was really complicated, and he was nice enough to invite me to the shop to see the jigs he set up and take a look at the progress. So tomorrow I'm going to head over there. This is John McNatt and his son Mark, and we are at
McNatt Contracting. Well, I guess we're going to start then in the back here. We're going to go to your project. We have several projects going on at once. These are the pieces that we took off of the house, and you can see that they are not in the best of shape. There's termite damage. There's water damage. But interestingly enough, these are the window sills for the three radius windows. I don't know if you'll be able to get a shot looking down here, but they are curved. It's not a flat piece of wood. So we've had to take SIPO wood and steam bend them to make the sills for the three windows. And then there's also some steam bending that was done for the upper parts of the frames.
So were these originally bent and steamed like that?
I don't know. Probably not. I'm gonna, if you start out with a large enough piece of wood, these were probably machined by hand, quite possibly with a bandsaw or something like that, way back in the day. But we found that instead of starting out with a massive piece of lumber, it's easier for us to steam bend the pieces.
So they would have had like steam-powered, like belt-driven bandsaws. And
Absolutely, where there would be a steam-powered engine or motor that would run shafts down the shop. In fact, there's
with the shafts. And actually, I worked at A&M. I took the machine shop, and we had a lot of the old belt-driven equipment.
well, it's still
That's
here.
how old I am.
It's still here. It's the Island City Millwork. Still has the shafts. Still has the machinery that was used in a lot of the houses in the 1800s.
This is the beginning stages of the bending. This has been soaking in bags over there with a little bit of ammonia and water, and that just helps open up the pores of the wood.
Wow.
It's not.
So this is SIPO.
Yes, this is SIPO. It's not bent at all yet, but it's just soaking up the stuff we need to get it to bend. And then in the back is where we're doing the bending.
It's kept in a plastic bag to keep the soaking solution from evaporating because it needs time to sit and work.
For comparison, these are the parts for the frames for your windows. This is the color of SIPO before it's been soaking in the bag with the water and the ammonia.
Looks like mahogany.
It's loosely a varietal of mahogany. There are so many woods that are called mahogany. This actually comes from, Ben, if I'm not mistaken, Congo region of Africa. It's a wonderful wood for us because it grows in very high humidity. It grows in a climate similar to ours, and we have had unbelievable success with this wood. Another one called sapele in Galveston with the humidity and the temperature fluctuations and the high heat. So this is we really enjoy.
What about termite?
It's not termite food. It's also not completely susceptible to termites.
So moderate.
All right, now I feel bad, but now we're taking you back to the deepest parts of the shop here. So here is the one of the sills that has been steam bent, and you can see it's a little bit of a challenge to do this. So these are put back in bags, and we actively steam them in a bag to make the shape. And then there's all these jigs underneath the bottom that are shimmed so that we get the perfect shape of what needs to be. And then this is one of the upper. This is the sub sill. That's the sill.
So this goes underneath.
This goes underneath that.
Two-part.
Correct. I believe Mark has one. Or these are some of the trim pieces. They're not finished being machined. We still need to cut this piece off, but you can see the molding.
They started off as straight stick
Wow.
and bent them into place. We first shaped them and then
And once,
bent them.
I guess it's a silly question, obviously, but once bent and dried, they won't try to go back to their original shape.
No.
We will not.
No.
With the bending, the steam, the heat, and then a little bit of the ammonia, that's actually going through and loosening the cell structure. Then once it dries back out, the cells all go back to the same spot. At least that's how Evan described it to me.
When you do put them on the jig and we steam them like this is overbent a little bit. So when you do release the clamps, because you have to clamp it slowly kind of over time, it will actually spring back
A little
so
bit.
you actually do have to bend it a little more because it will kind of pop back into place a little bit initially, but then it'll stay wherever it returns to.
It's a true craft. It's something that I'm proud that these guys are doing this, that we're keeping this type of heritage type woodworking alive and not using the flexible wood and the other products that are used more often now in modern construction.
Look at all these clamps.
Oh, whoever dies with the most clamps wins.
What is this?
That is a construction boring machine with two dovetail machines on top. That's actually for making cabinetry. This is an interesting piece. This drills square holes. So when you're doing mortise and tenon construction,
So it's almost a drill inside and a chisel on the outside.
the drill bit will go in and remove most of the wood, and then the chisel point pushes the wood fibers when you're plunging the cutter head, which is done by foot actuated.
A drill inside a chisel.
A drill inside of a chisel. This gets sharpened with a hone on the this side, and this gets sharpened with a conical hone. And they need to
And how old is your press? Because that looks like something I would have used.
This is, I don't, if you can, I'd have to look it up. I believe it's 1930-ish. Yeah, it's
30.
Yeah.
What I remember was 30s or 40s, somewhere in that era.
Yeah. So you put your piece in there to do the mortise that the tenon would go into, and you slowly work, and you get great glutes out of it by the end of the day. This is our one of our band saws. It's actually so large that if you come around to this side, you can see that you have to cut a hole in the concrete for the bottom of the wheel to go, so that you can have the tabletop at a semi-decent height to work with. We're able to raise this up and resaw lumber.
Look at the
Meaning-
on that. Okay, how sharp is
Very, it's a brand new blade.
that? Very sharp.
So we're able to take wood and split it in half. So we could.
So if I bring you a tree, you can make me some lumber.
Well, that's no, because it's getting the material through.
Yeah.
But we could take a board that's this wide, split it open, and then we could have a book match grain. This is a.
So I'm the one that kind of tunes up all the old machines whenever they come in. And whenever we first got this machine, this center wheel was not hooked up to its electronic brake yet. And I fired it on, and this spun for 20 minutes after it was off. It has so much mass to it And the bearings were also bad, which is probably why it spun that long. But it's a heavy duty machine.
This one that he just restored.
I just restored this one. This is a 1952 Northfield bandsaw. It looked horrible. Put a new coat of paint on it, completely overhauled the whole thing, and it is a beautiful machine now. It runs great.
I was admiring all the beautiful lumber and what I thought was a big planer when I looked down and I saw what appeared to be some of the pieces to the alcove window laying on the floor.
So these are your pieces doing their pre-soak of ammonia and water. The ammonia will help kind of jello up the inside. This is a time saver 3 belt sander. You start on this end and you feed your material through, so you can put an entire door through this thing, and you end up having
Start with a heavy
grit, medium, and fine. And as you can see, it takes a lot of motors. There's 5 motors on this thing just to get your material out.
50 horsepower, 40 horsepower, 30 horsepower, and then there's a 5 horsepower to raise it up and down.
And a 2.5 to run the belt.
So, question. So, the belts, are they like spring loaded or something? Because you can't
Pneumatic.
set it. They need to be, each one needs to be a little
They're pneumatic.
lower. So, so you set the pressure.
Correct.
And then
You can see the pressure gauges.
they're on some kind of a pneumatic cylinder and go up and down.
Here, I believe these are the tensioning pneumatic cylinders.
So, okay, yeah. Because it couldn't be at a fixed height.
I believe this is a 76 Northfield planer. Northfield makes some of the best woodworking machinery out there. And if I were to open it up for you and show you all the guts of it, it's a fascinating machine. There's so many little tiny working parts in here, and you can barely see anything, but there's the gears that drive the whole thing, and it's all fed off of one motor. So you have all of these gear reductions, and this is kind of like a torque converter for the whole machine. So the head will spin super fast to plane the wood down, and that same motor will drive your power feeds at a much slower rate with all the gear reductions, just to get wood flat. We can run some pretty.
My mind is spinning here.
We can run some pretty big material through this thing. I'm not going to turn it on because it gets pretty loud, but that will raise and lower the deck, and we can put stuff about that wide through the machine. I think 9 inches is our maximum.
But I want to correct them just a little bit. This does not flatten wood. The machine that flattens wood is over here.
Oh yeah, the joiner.
So when we get lumber in, which is is considered rough lumber, we run the boards across here to flatten them. So if it has any cupping, crown, or any defects of keeping it from being perfectly straight, they're flattened on here, and then we'll run the board up against the edge to get a straight edge. Once the board is mostly flat on the one side, then we move to the planer and then control the thickness of the board. So when I'm talking about plump lumber, this is how the lumber for your project comes in. This is what it looks like before. You can see the grain is very rough. It has not been machined yet.
Well, this is all about having the right tools, because I made those windows for the Lucas, and I used rough lumber, and I had to flatten it on it. I used a table saw and a planer and a heck of a lot of time and effort to take it from the rough to something I could use, where probably could have just gone zip and.
Well, there are some advantages to having more industrial machinery.
What's great about this planer in particular is most planers will leave what's known as chatter or snipe on the board. This one, you dial it in to a 10,000th of an inch, And once it's set, it is set. And it's almost coming out like it's sanded down to 180 grit.
Well,
it is so smooth.
The cutter head on this machine is helical. So instead of having straight knives that chop at the lumber, this actually shears the shavings off in long ribbons. This will be utilized. In fact, here is the jig that's still set up from making the molding that was steam bent earlier. And this is make sure it's unplugged. This is the cutter head that was used to make those moldings that we showed you earlier. So a corresponding piece of plywood is adhered to those boards and run through here, and that's how we get the radius to get the profile on there. And that's a power feeder. That when we're doing long runs, that swings around over here, and then we just load the material into one side or the other, and it power feeds it in the whichever direction we want it to go. We can run this in forward, reverse rotation depending on what we're trying to accomplish with the knife. This is one we. This is a table saw. We actually have 3 table saws, and each one has their own specific purpose. This one we use mainly for roughing because this one has up to a 16-inch blade, and we don't do any cross cutting on this one. This one is used strictly for ripping of material. We have our safety hold downs to keep it safe. I can show you real quickly probably one of the more interesting table saws that we use. This one is called a sliding table saw. The primary purpose of this saw is dealing with sheet goods, plywood, cabinet making. There's 2 blades. There's one blade in the very front that's called the scoring blade, and it spins in a reverse rotation. And when we set this up, this only sticks up a 32nd of an inch to
create a channel.
Right, before it goes into the main blade. And then we load the material. We'll load the material on this side, and then we push the entire 4x8 or 4x10 product through the saw. By doing that, we eliminate any of the chatter on the side of the board.
Wandering around the shop, I found some more of the pieces to my window, and they were clamped in place against this gorgeous spindle. I thought that's a pretty fancy way to clamp up a curve. Compared to all the other equipment we've been looking at, this table saw was a baby.
But an amazing saw. This is an Oliver 270. And these were produced for decades. It's a classic, unbelievable table saw, direct drive motor. There's an old thing on machinery. Can you take a nickel and put it on top of the saw and turn it on and turn it off, and the nickels still stay there? And this is so.
And show them this. This is your push.
That's the push stick, or this one.
That's the push stick.
We like to keep our fingers, and they literally don't make them like this anymore. This is a little thing that we do. This is for a house that we're working on. All these porch boards. When we get a porch job, we buy all the boards months in advance. We sticker them off to allow air circulation, and we not control the moisture, we monitor the moisture. And then when we get the moisture to where we want it, they need to dry out. We then tint the primer to whatever color the porch is going to be. And then we come in and we prime everything. This will be that classic battleship gray, but it's a little bit lighter. But with the primer being tinted, it will take the paint a lot easier. And what we end up with is, by resting and losing some of that moisture, is when we go to install the deck, we don't get as much shrinkage. If you take these boards and go directly to a deck and install them unprimed, fresh from the lumber yard, within 6 months you're going to have 1/8-inch gaps between the porch boards. So by having the foresight and the understanding of how these things work, we are able to do a much better quality job on any.
You'll appreciate then, because after Hurricane Harvey, our house, we had about 3.5 feet of water, and my parents' house was destroyed. But I took out their hardwood floors. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. Cleaned every board, scraped, cleaned every board, washed it, soaked them in, oh, there's a train whistle. Soaked them in bleach, and I stacked them up like this in my house for months and months and months in the air conditioning. Same thing. Once all the moisture was gone, we had them installed in our upstairs where we lost everything. So I have my childhood floors, but it was a horrible amount of work. I'll never do it again. There goes the train.
I want you to come back and visit with Evan. He's the craftsman who's been bending all this wood, and I'd love for him to be able to fill in any information that I've left out.
How much longer before we're ready for install?
I'll never divulge that. We have several weeks worth of work to do.
It was very generous of Mark and John to host me on such short notice. Eben, unfortunately, was sick today and couldn't be here. I'll come back when he's well to get some video of him actually going through the process and bending some of the pieces. This is a real turning point for the house. Instead of just tearing things down and doing brick structural work, now we get to start putting the house back together. This will also help close the house up and secure it from the outside elements. But there's still a lot to do. As a nonprofit, we rely on donations to fund the restoration of this incredible house. Check out our website, League-Kempner House.org, for ways to support us, such as making a donation or volunteering your time. We look forward to all of you being able to personally tour the house someday. But until then, watching these videos helps us, so keep up to date on what's happening, subscribe, turn on your notifications. You really make a difference. And we hope to see you next time here at the League-Kempner House in Galveston, Texas.